wonder why the screen is not filling up the whole thing. That's interesting. Huh, that's weird. Okay. Okay. Let me try this again. Yeah, too many things open.
Good morning, Rabbi. Mazel tov to you.
Thank you. Hi, Shmuel. Okay, so we have two Israelis, I think, on the line. I hope everyone else is here. Okay. All right. We're going to start a new Shaila this evening, this morning, I should say. It feels, yeah. Okay. Here's the okay. So after a long absence, let's continue. We're continuing on with the new Shaila. The previous Shaila, the question was, is a person liable for lost tzedakah money? And so we said it depended if it depended if the pledge was on the individual or was on the coinage itself. So if you put money in a pushka, once it's put in the pushka, you're no longer responsible for it. But if you pledge a certain charity, some tzedakah, then you have, and for whatever reason you put aside money and you lose it, you still are responsible to make sure that that charity gets the money. That's the general principle, but there were more details as well. So here we are with our new she'elah, and for some reason this is not filling the whole screen on. I guess you're able to see the screen if you're in TV land, but the screen here for whatever reason is only partial. Okay, she'elah. Shimon gadal b'mishpacha shelo hishtamshu berechev prati. Shimon grew up in a family that did not have its own car. La'achar nisuav hitchil la'avod, v'kana la'atzmo l'tzarech avodato rechev. After he got married, he got a job, and his job required him to drive to different places, so he bought himself a car. Im hazman hitragel li'ishtamesh berechev, v'harechev hafach etzlo l'davar shebil'adav I efshar. So the car, over time, became something that was essential to his livelihood and to his sort of living standards. Ka'avor mispar shanim azav et avodato. After a few years, he sold his car, left his job. So he left his job, sold his car, went and joined the kola, and said, "I'm living the dream. That's it. I'm not gonna be making money anymore. I want to sit and learn. This is my commitment." Shimon chash she'eno yachol b'li harechev she'elav hitragel. So Shimon was concerned that life would be difficult for him to adjust to without a car. However, he's under difficult financial constraints now that he's learning in Kollel, and he's been forced to accept money from charity organizations that collect for young men who are studying in Kollel. So, ha'im mutar lo liknot rechev b'kaspei hatzdaka shu mekabel. Is he permitted to purchase a new car? Or I'm saying not a new car, but a car to replace his old car using the tzedakah money that he now receives as a Kollel Junger Man. So the question really is, this question is a real life question, but it really revolves around the whole issue of what is a person allowed to use his tzedakah money for? We know that the Gemara says that all is based upon your living standards before you became poor. So if your living standards before you became poor was to live in a single family home and to, let's say, have meat every Shabbos and to buy yourself a new set of clothes every Yantif, then you're permitted as a charity recipient to live under those same standards. That's what the Gemara says. And it all depends on what your living standard, what you're used to. Now, so that's really the basis for this question. So in the tshuva, he says, Tchila yesh lahakdim she'ein la'ani lakachat mikasbei hatzdaka ela dei machsoro. So the first we have to clarify that a person collecting tzedakah, a person who's living off of tzedakah, is only allowed to accept that which is necessary for dei machsoro. Dei machsoro means what his living needs are. Because that's the mitzvah. The Torah says you shall give to the poor person that which is enough to cover his loss. Dei machzora, enough to fill his loss. Hainu lidvarim hahachi nitzrachim kefi shenahug ba'oto zman uva'oto makom. That is to say that he's entitled to collect what is considered to be basic essentials based on that time and place. Ulam, no, in other words, could you argue to a person, well, since your grandfather lived in a shtetl, in a mud hovel, with dirt floors, you should have to reduce yourself to that standard and before you can collect tzedakah? No. If everyone in the 21st century lives with wooden floors or linoleum floors, you're entitled to get a floor like that also. I don't know if you heard Rabbi Breidowitz's story over Shabbos about shuls, right? There was a shul that was having a fundraiser in Europe like over 100 years ago because the shul was buying a wood floor, which previously it had only a dirt floor. This guy go back 200 years. So the Panovitcher Rav got up and his pitch for the fundraiser was that, we know that when Mashiach comes, everyone's going to go back to Eretz Yisrael. How are we going to get all the Jews to go back? So he said, well, it's based on a Gemara. The Gemara says that all of the synagogues will be magically transported to Eretz Yisrael. So the Jews of every shtetl will come to their shul, and when the shul gets transported, they'll get transported too. So he says, but that's only true if the shul has a floor. Because if there's no floor, the building will pick up and everyone will be left on the dirt floor, on the dirt. So anyway, that's why I was thinking about the dirt floor. It's a good pitch, but it doesn't work according to physics. But anyway, okay. Ula mishi hitragel b'motarot kfar mi beit avota vehani motarot elahim etzlo begeder. If a person was used to a certain living standard before he became poor, and then became poor, whatever his living standard was before he became poor, now is considered to be his basic essentials. Right. So this halacha has always sort of gnawed on me a little bit because it has to be within reason, right? Okay, it's like, what was that name of that movie years ago, Down and Out in Beverly Hills, right? So, a woman gets kicked out of her wealthy husband's house and she's got to wander the streets and, she's used to shopping at Tiffany's. Does that mean that she's entitled now to buy everything, buy her clothes at Tiffany's or Tiffany? That's from the tzedakah money, right? Or from Saks or whatever it is. What's the ceiling, right? That's really, it's really not clear. So we'll have to get back to that. So lefi zeh, so based on that, benidon didan l'chora, Shimon enenu rashai liknot b'kaspei tzedaka rechev shein ze nechshav lo dei machzoro, shehare lo hitragel berechev mi beit avotav. He says Shimon, therefore, since he only started driving cars once he got married, it's not something that he grew up with. It's not something, he didn't grow up having his own car. So based on that, he would not be entitled to purchase a car from tzedakah money just because he had it for a few years while he was married. Ulam lanias daiti ef shalomar shagam im Shimon lo hitragel berechav mi beit avotav. But he says, but it would seem to me, on the other hand, that even though he didn't grow up with a car, mikol makom ata shuhu ani, but now that he is poor, he says it would still be permissible for him to use the tzedakah money to pay for a car. Even though since he was not acting irresponsibly when he started driving a car, he did it because a huge or large number of the population own private cars. So he's not acting like he's not living high on the hog by having a car. And therefore, since it's something that he had for a short period of time, even though he didn't grow up with it, but it's not something that is well beyond the standard of the average citizen of our country, it would be permissible nonetheless for him to use the tzedakah money to buy a car. So let's see what the source of this deliberation is. So he says on the bottom of the page, he says, Hinei ha'meiri kosav za. He writes, V'yasam shabalisa osim lo kol tzarko min hatzdaka b'tzimtzum. He says, when an orphan seeks to get married, and this is the whole sugya of these laws of tzedakah based on a person's living standards, is from a Gemara in Ksuvas. He says, if an orphan comes to get married and he needs money for his wedding, and just to get him set up, you do the bare minimum for him. Sochrin lo bayit, matzian lo mito chlei tashmish, v'achar kach matzian oso. So first of all, we rent a house, or a living quarter. We set up beds for him in his home. We set up living utensils, let's say appliances and dining set, whatever, and then we marry him off. V'kulam b'tzimtzum gadol ucheseder, but it has to be done with tremendous frugality, and it has to be in an organized way. Shenamar de machzoro, as it says, you provide to him what he is lacking. Lefarnaso atamitzuva velola ashro ad kan lashana. And what we learn from those words, de machzoro, is that you only have to provide to him what he needs in order to subsist, but not what he needs in order to be wealthy. You're not obligated to enrich a poor person. You're only obligated to make sure that they have what to live. That's the opposite of what we're saying. It sounds like from what the Meiri is saying, when he says you have to do it with great frugality, that you see from here that, at least according to his opinion, that you should only use tzedakah money with that which is absolutely necessary. And that's considered to be fulfillment of the mitzvah of Dei Machzoro. By the way, there's a guy who comes to me, I think just about every year. He collects tzedakah to buy furniture for newlywed couples. That's what his tzedakah is. It's a good sales pitch, and I always give him, because I feel like that is it's very much tachlis. It's not like an ongoing support of a guy in Kolel, where you could argue that perhaps there's an abuse of the system. clearly you know what the money's going for, and it's a one-time expenditure for couples who are constantly getting married. So to me, that makes it's a good charity cause. Ulam mistaver she'ena kavana shetzarach latet et hanitzrach betzimtzum gamor shevaofen ze pshita delo havidei machzoro. But on the other hand, we have to also understand that the Meiri is not saying that you give him only the barest of bare essentials. He says, because a lot of times that you're not fulfilling his loss. Because what if he was used to a certain living standard? Ela hakavana shetzarach latet et hanitzrach bioter kefi shenahug ba'oto makom va'oto zman v'zenach shabdei machzora. What it means is that you have to give him the bare essentials of what people are used to living with in that time, in that place. So if everyone in the community has a dining room set with, let's say, 6 chairs or 8 chairs, so then that should be considered to be part of the package. If everyone in that community has a couch for their living room, so then that should be part of the bare essentials, right? Does that make sense? If everyone has, let's say, 4 beds in their house, then it wouldn't be enough just to buy him 2 beds, because then he'll never be able to host guests in his home, right? Okay, so I think we understand what we're saying.
Because it's a standard, the community, it's a wealthy community, it's standard. We've gone through this over the years about having these more simplified type of weddings, but if everybody else is doing it at a higher level, and you're going to just be putting out very modestly, not the standard of the community.
Right. That's true. But I would argue, I would counter your argument, Ron, that even within wealthy communities, there's a wide variety of how people make weddings. There's a huge sort of spectrum. So that, yes, I would say that within that spectrum, it's expected that everyone who makes a wedding will be able to feed their guests and give them a basic meal, right? But then you also have weddings where sometimes people will just make the chuppah and just have a dinner for the family, and then we'll have a dessert reception afterwards for everybody else. So there's what's the word I'm looking for? There's a variety, across the board. So even even people who are wealthy and have the means to make weddings will sometimes scale it back because they don't want to be ostentatious. They don't want to flaunt their wealth. Yeah, I know, but right. But I'll tell you something, that's more my experience is that's more the exception than the rule. I think, yes, that's true. For bar and bat mitzvahs, they will make a rule that sometimes you have to invite the whole class, or that you have to limit it to doing it in your home. You can't take the girls to a destination.
So it's all they only have in the class, they do something in the class, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's the reason why they do that. So as not to embarrass someone who can't afford. But so you're right that in other respects, there are certain, but here we're talking about Hilchos tzedakah, which is even one step beyond that. Here, what we're saying is, does a person who is needy have a right to use the tzedakah money that he collects for things that are not absolutely essential? And the answer is it depends how you define essential. The way we're defining essential, it seems, is based on what people are used to living with in the current time and place in which we're living. And you want to know something? I agree with that. Yeah, that is considered to be today, that's considered to be basic necessity, even though air conditioning could be very expensive. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe yeah, maybe no. I mean, he's writing this in a time when maybe the internet wasn't even a thing yet. This could be written 30 years ago, you know. All right. Now, V'hinei b'shita mikubetzes kasav v'zel afilu sus lirchov olav v'dafka ba'asher sheyarad min achasav shuhu murgal mitchila b'tanugim gedolim. So he says, what is this all based on? Okay, so it's based on a Gemara in Ksuvas Daf Samach Zayin Amid Beis. So he takes it for granted that we already know the Gemara. I guess I should probably bring up that Gemara in Sefaria. Let me just bring it up quickly. How's our internet doing? Okay. Ksuvas Samach Zayin Amid Beis. Our reception is a little bit slow today. It's weird. Oh, here we go. So this Gemara is talking about all of the laws of tzedakah. So the sages taught concerning an orphan boy, Yasam Shabalisa, Sochin lo bayis, Umatzian lo mita, V'chol klei tashmisho v'achar kach masian lo isha. Okay, so, oh, sorry. Yes. What am I doing? New share. There we go. All right, I hope this is up. An orphan who wants to get married, we rent a house for him. We set up a bed for him and all of his utensils. And therefore they marry him a wife, as it is stated, but you shall surely open your hand to him, and you shall surely lend to him sufficient for his deficiency in that which is deficient for him. Okay, with regard to the phrase sufficient for his deficiency, this refers to his house, which is deficient. This is referring to a bed and a table. For him, this is referring to a wife. And similarly, okay. Tanu Rabbanan de machsaro atamitzuva alav lafarnaso v'atamitzuva alav laashra. When the Torah says that you are obligated to fill his lack or fill his need, that means you have to sustain him, but not to enrich him. Asher yechsar lo, but if he's missing something, you have to provide that for him. Contradictorily, afilu sus lirkov alav ve'eved laritz lefanav. You even have to get him a horse and even a runner slave to run before him, right? So Amru alav al Hillel hazaken shelokach la'ani ben tovim echad sus lirkov alav ve'eved laritz lefanav. And they say that Hillel, the elder, did just that. When he saw that there was a young man who came from a very fine aristocratic family and then was an ani, because maybe, whatever, he was orphaned at a young age, he actually purchased for him a horse and a slave to run before him. Pam achas lamatza eved larutz lefanav, v'ratz lefanav shlosha milin. One time he couldn't find a slave to run before him, so he himself ran before him for 3 mills, for 3 kilometers. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan, the Brisa further says, Maaseh, and of course, so if we were to take a look at Rashi here, what would Rashi tell us over here? Huh? Why is there no Rashi here? All commentary. Okay. Here, let's see if there's Rashi over here. No, there's no Rashi over here either. Okay. Okay. Here's Rashi. Tana Rabbanan, there was an incident involving the people of the Upper Galilee who bought for a person of noble descent from the city of Tzipori a litra of meat every day. The Gemara asks if they provided him with the reasonable ration of a litra of meat, what is the novelty in this incident? Like, what's the big deal? That's not a huge amount. Why does it bear repeating? Rav Huna said it was a litra of meat of poultry, which is very expensive. And or you could say that for the weight of a litra of coins, they bought him actual red meat. The price of ordinary meat was so expensive that they had to pay the exorbitant price of a litra of coins. Rav Ashi said that they did not spend a litra of coins for him. Rather, they're in the Galilee. It was a small village, and every day they would lose an entire animal just for him. They would slaughter an animal daily simply to provide him with fresh meat, although there was otherwise no market for such a plentiful supply of meat in the village. Okay, a man once came before Rabbi Nehemiah to ask for charity. He said to him, on what do you normally dine? Like Rashi says, Ma ata ragil le'echol b'seudasecha. What do you normally eat? So he said to him, I usually dine on fatty meat and aged wine. Rabbi Nehemiah asked him, is it your wish to belittle yourself and partake together with me in a meal of lentils, which is my regular food? Probably a much healthier meal, wouldn't you think? It's got plenty of protein, lentils, and yeah. He partook with him of lentils, and he died, since he was not accustomed to this food. So Rabbi Nehemiah said, "Woe to this one who was killed by Nehemiah." The Gemara wonders, on the contrary, Rabbi Nehemiah should have said, "Woe to Nehemiah who killed this one." The Gemara responds, rather, Rabbi Nehemiah meant that it was he, the pauper, who should not have pampered himself so much. The poor man was to blame for his own death. His excessive indulgence rendered him incapable of digesting simple foods, such as lentils. Okay. The Gemara relates another story. A certain person came before Rava to request tzedakah. He said to him, on what do you normally dine? He said to him, on a fattened hen and aged wine. He said to him, and were you not concerned for causing a burden to the community by expecting such expensive foods? He said to him, is that to say that it is from their funds that I eat? I eat from the support of the merciful one. Not, right? The Eibishter helfen. The Eibishter helfen, yeah. This would seem to be a reasonable argument, as we already learned that in the verse, the eyes of all wait for you, and you give them food in its time. The phrase at their time is not stated, rather in its time. This teaches that the Holy One, blessed be He, gives each and every person his personally appropriate sustenance in his proper time, and the community is merely his agent in discharging his will. Therefore, the man is justified in maintaining his standard. In the meantime, while they were talking, Rava's sister, who had not seen him for 13 years, came, and as a gift, she brought him a fattened hen and aged wine. Rava said to himself, what is this that happened in front of me, that suddenly I am brought food that I do not usually eat? He then understood that this was a providential response to what he had earlier said to the man. Rava said to him, I have responded to your contention, arise and eat. And he basically gave him the gift that his sister, who he hadn't seen for 13 years, had just delivered to him. Okay. So all of these Gemaras indicate that it's based on the standard of the person, right? You know, it's like that story. You'll appreciate this. A guy comes to a specialist, the most expensive specialist in town, and he said he wants to be treated for whatever his arthritis, whatever it was. And so when it comes time, the receptionist gives him a bill, and he says, I can't afford this. This is way too much. So she said to him, well, why did you come to the most expensive specialist in town? You could have gone to the local clinic. He said, because when it comes to my health, nothing is too expensive, right? You know, right. So that's anyway. So this is the issue that we're dealing with over here now, and that's really the question of balance that we have to really arrive at. So we'll continue with Os Beis and Mirz Hashem tomorrow. Okay. Okay. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.